I'm Tim Phillips, CEO at Phillips & Company Advisors, and I'm really excited to introduce you to the best-selling author of Psychology of Money and our friend, Morgan Housel. I've asked Morgan to introduce some key concepts around money and psychology that we hope will help improve your life. Today, Morgan's going to talk about the negative art of investing and FOMO. Morgan, let me kick it over to you.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you so much for Phillips for letting me do these videos. I always enjoy it. And I want to talk to you today about what I think is one of, if not the single most important topic, not just investing, but in money overall. And that is FOMO, the fear of missing out. There's this funny thing about money, which is that it's a negative art. What I mean by that is you often have a better chance of accumulating more money by getting rid of bad traits instead of trying to acquire good ones. Now, most ambitious people, their intuition when they want to get better at something is to ask, how can I get smarter? How can I get more informed? How can I find new skills? And in many fields, those are the right questions to ask. Money is this weird exception where asking questions instead like, how can I be less dumb and less greedy and less impatient? That's what actually moves the needle. That's what's actually going to help you. And if there is one trait whose removal from your personality can do more to improve your financial situation than anything else, it is the fear of missing out. Having no FOMO might be the single most important investing skill. And being immune to the siren song of other people's success, especially when their success is sudden and extreme and caused by factors outside of their control, is so powerful and so important that it is practically impossible to do well over time without it. A little historical bit for you here. When strategizing, Dwight Eisenhower, the famous president in general, of course, he used to quote Napoleon. And Napoleon used to say that a military genius was, quote, the man who can do the average thing when everyone else around him is losing his mind. And it's the exact same with money. And this is why FOMO becomes so dangerous when you're trying to chase the other people who might be losing their minds. FOMO is recklessness masked as ambition. I think that's really what gets to the heart of what is going on here. I have this quote on my wall right here in my office from JP Morgan, the man JP Morgan. The quote says, "Nothing so undermines your financial judgment as the sight of your neighbor getting rich." That's what FOMO is. You see somebody else, your coworkers or your neighbors or your friends or people on social media who are getting rich, or at least they appear to be getting rich, and you think, if they can do it, I can too. And here's the problem. This is why it's so dangerous. That feels like a good emotion. That feels like a good feeling to have. It feels like you are learning through observation. You watch somebody else getting rich and you're just thinking, if they can do it, I can do it too. That feels good. So you keep doing it. But what's actually occurring here is that you are just outsourcing your emotions to people, somebody else whose quick windfall probably left them in a very financial, emotional state to begin with. And when you frame it that way, you see how dangerous this is. FOMO is also so dangerous to your finances because it forces you into short-termism. If you only bought an investment because it went up and you saw somebody else getting rich, you will be the first person to panic when it inevitably goes down. If the only reason you bought it is because somebody else was going and getting rich, well, when they stop getting rich, why do you still own it? You don't really know. So it forces you into short-termism. Charlie Munger, the great investor, he once said, "Someone will always be getting richer faster than you." And he said, this is not a tragedy. The idea of caring that someone is making money faster than you is one of the deadly sins of money. And here's what's so great about what you can do about this. When you remove FOMO from the financial equation, what's left over? Well, you only care about your own goals. You tend to avoid getting sucked into bubbles of other people and their financial misbehavior. You tend to think long-term. And once you have those, you don't need much else to do well over time. Let me share a related point here about chasing money and why FOMO is so dangerous. Will Smith, the actor Will Smith, in his biography, he wrote something that I thought was actually very profound. He said, "Becoming famous is amazing. Being famous is a mixed bag. And losing fame is absolutely miserable." So for him, it's not the amount of fame that matters. It's the trajectory that makes all the difference. Like, as long as you are becoming more famous, that's what feels great. Just being famous, like, not that big of a deal. And I think it's the same with money. I think for a lot of people, the process of becoming wealthier feels better than having wealth. That is why FOMO is so powerful and why it is so addictive and dangerous. Because look, if it is wealth that we are after, most of us would already feel great. We would already feel like we won the game because most of us are wealthier today than we were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even 2 years ago. And this is especially true if you look around the economy. U.S. household, the aggregate household net worth today is $80 trillion more than it was 10 years ago. $80 trillion wealthier today than we were just 10 years ago. That is astounding. How much richer we are today than we were just 10 short years ago. But here's another little statistic. U.S. household net worth is $700 billion less than it was 3 months ago because we have inflation and bonds are falling in price and the stock market's doing what it's doing. One of those figures creates 10 times the headlines, 10 times the attention, 10 times the emotion and the introspection as the other. Losing a little bit of money feels way worse than gaining a ton of money over time. Because again, what people are really after is not the level of wealth. It's just the trajectory of gaining money that they're really chasing and that feels good. And this is, again, part of why FOMO is so common. What feels great to people is just being on an upward path. That's when the dopamine takes over. That's when you can extrapolate and just assume that it goes on forever. And when most people hear something like that, they respond with the classic line, it's not the journey, it's the destination. That's what really matters. Just enjoy the process of investing. That's the solution here. And I think some of the time that might be good advice, but I think in a specific case, it's almost exactly backwards. Because an addiction to the process of making money and chasing FOMO is just a version of never having enough and never being satiated. And it means that you're playing a game that can never be won. But it gives this illusion that there's a finish line right around the corner. Oh, if my net worth was X dollars, all my problems would go away. I'd be happy. Everything would be great. You're chasing this illusory, vision, this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that doesn't exist. So you keep chasing and keep chasing and keep chasing. My sense is that a lot of people kind of quietly suffer with investing in money because they expect that it's going to end. They expect they're going to reach a point where all their problems are solved, and it never does. And they're frustrated when it never does. So they think like they're in this game, but what's actually happening is like all they want is the numbers to go up, which is maybe half of the game. I think the best people can do is an indifference to the process of investing, an indifference to the volatility and the surprises and the setbacks that are inevitable in the process, or maybe just an acceptance of the process, knowing that it's going to be a constant chain of surprise and volatility and setback and disappointment. But if you can stick around long enough, the odds of eventual growth and success are in your favor. That is very different from enjoying the process of money, which can quickly turn into addiction of not needing more and always chasing something that might never come.